All right, good evening. I'd like to call this January 24th, 2019 Selectmen's meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. First order of business, to approve the January 10th, 2019 Selectmen minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Approved. Public forum. This is an opportunity for anybody wishing to address the board tonight with any issues that are not on the agenda. No? Seeing none. We're going to move item number 4, H.M. Payson, till a little later. They're not here yet, but we will move on. Item number 5, we're going to have a public hearing to consider a new liquor license application submitted by Tailor Made Hospitality Incorporated, DBA Hurricane Restaurant at 29 Dock Square. I'd like to open the public hearing. At this time, I would accept, is there anybody here who would like to have any public comment on that? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion to accept the...
So moved.
Okay.
With pleasure.
Second?
Taylor Benente's a friend of mine, and I'm very happy to do this.
Okay, and I'd like to say to the public that all the public safety officials have been down and given it all their blessing, so I have a motion. All those in favor? So moved. Congratulations to the new owners of Hurricanes. Okay, I'd also like to, item number 6, consider a special amusement permit application submitted by Taylor Benente, DBA Hurricane Restaurant, 29 Dock Square.
So
Just
moved.
need a vote for that.
Second.
All in favor? Again, congratulations. Okay, one of the main events, department directors present capital improvements plans. Lori, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you. As part of the annual budget process, we begin with a discussion of our capital improvement plan. So in your packet tonight, you have a 5-year capital improvement plan that also notes future items. We also have a road program that Mike Claus has done from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2029. The capital improvement plan is a plan. It is not a budget document. It does not mean that everything in this plan will get funded. It does not mean that everything in this plan will get done, get constructed, or happen in the year in which you'll see it in this plan. But it is a beginning point to recognize not only the current year expenditures, but what is needed in future years and what kinds of investment the town has made in the past and will need to make in the future. The departments have all worked on their individual capital plans, and tonight we'll give you the highlights of them. There are some major projects coming up and the reason why we bring these up is because they are discussion points, and this is how policy is made so that we can discuss the pros and cons as well as the financial constrictions of the town. So to begin with, in your book you also have some charts. The first one is just for FY20 and it's by department. And you can see by that the wastewater and public works make up the clear majority of the capital improvement plan. That is where the majority of our infrastructure is, both in terms of sewer infrastructure and roads. And that certainly makes sense. The next chart you have is FY20 through the future, and it shows you what years. And you can see that the future holds the majority or half of the funding necessary. In FY22 and 23 have more expenditures than other years, and we'll discuss those in more detail. And the last chart is by category, and it shows that the 63% of the capital improvement plan in FY20 is infrastructure and 21% is equipment. So certainly that gets back to the fact that public works and wastewater hold the majority of the capital improvement plan. So to begin with, I'm going to ask Tracy O'Rourke and Werner Gilliam to come up. We're going to start with the administration department. The first item on there for FY20 is a municipal facility needs assessment. And one of the challenges that we've been trying to address is with the fire department and what the future of the fire department holds. We've talked to you about some of our challenges with volunteers and having qualified personnel on duty Monday through Friday during the day. And so certainly if the department needs to in the future change to a different kind of labor than our on-call department now, we would need some other types of facilities. And so we need to determine whether Village Fire Station could handle that or whether or not we would need to look at a different station at a different location. One of the other things that we've talked about in the past is the town office needs. And the town office in its current location is cramped. There is more room in the old fire bays that we could expand out there, but it is an in-town location and parking has been maxed out. So really, we are at a question mark as to whether it continues to make sense to invest money there or do it elsewhere. So one of the things I'm proposing is that we involve an architect and an engineer to do any municipal facilities or programming needs for both departments so that we gain more understanding of really what makes sense for the future and what those potential costs might be. I'm going to ask Werner to cover some of the items that are generated from his department.
Good evening, everyone. So the first point that I'd like to just touch base on is is a comprehensive plan update. And so it's hard to believe that we're looking at a 10-year lifespan of our comprehensive plan. It just seems like yesterday we were doing the rewrite, of the plan that we have now. So it is recommended by the state that a town look at their comprehensive plan and update it every 10 years. And so looking forward to 2022, the Growth Planning Committee and I have laid out a calendar of where we're looking to achieve meeting that time frame. So why update a comprehensive plan? Simply put, the comp plan is really your underpinning for your zoning ordinance. It's the guidance document for your ordinance, and as such, it needs to be kept up to date, and the ordinances need to be reviewed for consistency with them. Another thing that I think is important to know, that having a current comp plan that's also been reviewed by the state and has been found consistent really keeps us competitive when it comes to grants, to state-funded grants. We've been the beneficiary of a number of state grants. I'd like to say that Government Wharf, where we received a number of SHIP grants. By having a strong comp plan for the fishing industry, I think that was helpful in securing that grant money. Without a consistent comp plan, I think our eligibility for monies like that, we're not going to be as successful. And again, a lot of our data now that we have within the plan is coming up in terms of being out of date. So the comp plan also has a lot of capital improvement items that show up in capital improvement plans, but also show up in the comp plan. So a lot of those items are coming up soon in terms of being out of date. And lastly, recognizing that the way that people gather their information and the way that we communicate has changed. Previous comp plans have really been done more in a book and a paper format, and so we're looking to this new format will be a version that will both be able to be utilized in a paper format, but it's also going to be redone so that it's easier to use electronically as well. So. And looking at a couple of different towns that have done recent comp plan updates and having had discussions with Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission, we're estimating a comp plan rewrite and a comp plan update estimate cost prices in the $90,000 range. Next piece I'd like to discuss is the update to our assessing software. The assessing software that we use is referred to as Vision, is the name of the program. So we've been using Vision since 1998 when the town went from paper to electronic for its assessing system. And I have to say that it is a robust system with very few technical issues, and has been a very good program and a good company to work with. But one of the bigger reasons for the update going from version 6.5 that we're currently at to version 8 is, quite frankly, the platform that it's built on, which is Oracle, is soon to be phased out within the next few years. And so, simply put, we're going to be lacking technical support from Oracle on which this platform is built. So we would be faced with having to update or change programs, within the next year or two anyways. And also Vision, we've looked at other different programs, but Vision also relatively seamlessly ties into our online GIS. So it's a critical piece for putting out that data that folks are able to look at on the web. So we estimate to bring us up to speed on version 8 will cost us in the $25,000 range. Also on the assessing front, we're looking forward to doing a market equalization and analysis. And so you might ask, well, what's the difference between a market analysis and a revaluation? So the difference between the two, think of a market adjustment as a small version of a reval. Currently, right now, what we're seeing is our overall market value of the town in conjunction with the state value beginning to drop. So the numbers are starting to they're becoming inconsistent with each other. Right now, we currently report. We report at 97%, but the reality of it is we're allowed a 10% deviation, and so we're really at 88%. And so what does that mean? What that means is that we're headed in a direction where homestead exemptions are no longer going to be receiving their full value. This is something that we've looked at. We've looked at the trend, and this isn't just a blip for the current year. This is a progression that is slowly moving downward, so that those inequities will continue to get worse. For history purposes, in 2001, the town had an opportunity or was told about the need for a market adjustment and chose not to do that market adjustment. This was right when the beach sales were starting to really kick up. As a result, the town held off, and instead of an 88%, we wound up with closer to 43% of market, which is why we wound up with a reval in 2009. So think of this market adjustment as a tune-up to the town's assessment. This would involve updating our construction tables. This is where we're seeing some of the biggest changes has been in construction values. The cost per square foot for construction has changed dramatically since 2009. It's gone up, and this would also give us somewhat of an in-depth look at some recent sales as well. So, estimate from Vision Appraisal for this service puts us in about the 70,000 range. We think that doing this type of market adjustment will significantly increase I'll say the lifespan of the reval that we had in 2009. We estimate doing another full reval, would actually be somewhere in the $500,000 range. And it's not unheard of for communities to have to undergo or deal with a reval every 10 years. So in the grand scheme, we've done relatively well with the numbers that we have, but because we're seeing this downward trend, we'd like to address some of the issues that we know that are out there before it gets any worse. So,
Warner, how long do you think it'll take for them to do that? Do you think it'll be ready by our FY21 budget cycle?
potentially. I mean, I expect it would take about a year, to do that type of work. One of the tricky things is trying to get the timing right for being able to hold public hearings for folks when they're in town. And so, we'll have to work. We'd have to work with the calendar because we want folks to be able to respond to notices that they've received about changes in valuation. So trying to engage, most folks will be, a little bit of a tricky dance in terms of the calendar. But in terms of time frame, yeah, I think it could be accomplished within a year.
Thank you, Werner.
Thank you.
Good evening. Excuse me. I have requested $5,000 in the CIP budget for records preservation. I'm afraid that there really isn't any way to make it exciting in a presentation, but it is an important part of my responsibilities as town clerk to maintain and preserve the town's records. By continuing to fund this process, we are assuring that our records will be archived for generations to come. And in 2018, we finalized our vital records books. So those are all up to date, which is really exciting. And we started to work on the town record books back from the 1940s and 50s. And those books include all of the town's business, including warrants and results of elections, committee and board appointments, petitions, town meeting minutes, and all of those things. The book for 1945 through 1957 is currently at the location being restored to archival quality. And so the next 6 books are what we have left to do for that. And then once those are all done, we can get working on the valuation books. And we have lots and lots of those to do. So there's still a lot of work to do, and I'm hoping that you'll continue to fund this important project for the town as a whole. And then also in the plan, I am asking for $5,000 for new voting booths. As you probably have noticed, our voting booths are very old and tired, and some of the tabletops are getting hard to hook on, so if people put a lot of pressure on them, they tend to collapse. So that can be a hazard to people voting if they put any pressure on them. So the booths that I'm suggesting are better quality, and they are much sturdier. They're made of plastic, really heavy-duty plastic. They'll take up less storage space when not in use, and they'll be easier for the highway department to set up and take down on election day. They'll take up less room on election day because they're a four booth system, so I'd only need to have 5 of them, and instead of having booths all around the perimeter, I could just keep it on one section of the room. So that would leave more room for people in line for the voting booths, for the voting machines. Kennebunk and Lyman currently use these booths and are having a lot of success with them, and Arundel is in the process of switching over as we speak. The company that we use for our election equipment has offered to let us borrow one for June, so we can try it out, see how it works for us before we commit to actually buying them. And it'll also give our residents a little sneak peek into what might be coming down the pike. And if room allows for it at the CIP presentation in March, I'm going to try to have it set up so everyone can actually see what it looks like and touch it and feel it. And I do have the flyer so you can see what they look like and what I'm talking about. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Tracy.
Oh, I see.
The other item is town hall construction. I have put out an FY '23. Again, that is just a placeholder at this point. As we need to really understand the municipal facility needs survey in order to get more accurate numbers, but it is a placeholder out there that I see that coming in the future. Next, I'm going to ask Chief Sanford to come up and talk about communications and police.
Good evening, everyone. The police department is pretty well set. Unfortunately, we still have to replace cars. They wear out.
Turn that on. Yeah, turn that mic on.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's worked out very good for us, trying to replace a car every year. I do have in the CIP, looking in the forecast, we're gonna have to probably replace our climate control system for cooling. This year I just replaced the boiler, and I just recently replaced the water heater. Those were original to the building when they were installed, so next is going to come the cooling system. We have a lot of equipment in the station, and eventually that's gonna come down the pike. For the future for us, as far as communications, the state is still looking at We recently went to the EFD, which is the Emergency Fire Dispatch Protocols. I can see those coming down the pipe for the police department, so emergency police protocols will be coming. That'll force us to change the way that we currently do business. I don't know what that means for us here in Kennebunkport as far as the communication center goes. We're exploring avenues as we speak. You know, some of these things will require you know, significant upgrades in equipment. You know, right now the future is kind of uncertain in that area, which way we're gonna go. We're functioning, we're doing well, but some of those things may possibly force us to do business differently than we've always done it, and you know, that could have some dollar signs that I can't predict right now. Any questions?
No.
Pretty simple.
Chief Everett, can you talk about fire?
All day long.
Good evening. Similar to the police chief's, my capital is pretty straightforward. From what I understand, it has been for the last while, funding the same types of projects, like our turnout gear, is because we use it for about 10 years, and it runs us $18,000 or so for those 8 sets that we buy a year. But that gets us through everybody, so that our gear that active interior firefighters especially are using is not more than 10 years old, which is recommended by NFPA. I have some money in there for the radio equipment, which is a kind of a standard thing. The radios and pagers wear out. They, you know, the firefighting's not a clean environment, so we damage things and stuff like that. We moved a few things into more of a capital reserve, which was in the program that's not listed now, but looking forward to replacing all our air packs and starting to put money into an account like we do with the $130,000 for the fire truck account, so that when it comes time, we've been saving the money and it's not as big a hit. And that's really all I have. It's pretty simple. I did move a few things around, and looking at, just for a note, when you look at FY23, it looks obviously pretty stacked because there's a truck in there, and that was basically just put in because the truck was going to be 25 years old at that time, and I won't know for another year or so if that truck starts acting more of its age than it is now. Then, you know, we look at replacing it. If not, maybe we can push it off, understanding that ends up stacking up possibly other vehicles and projects as well. But that's just because that one's such a change from all the other years in the capital.
Thank you, Jay.
All right.
So
Parks and Rec.
next we have Carol Cook with Parks and Rec.
Good evening. So I came in here this evening to be a hero. But now I'm not so sure. Bottom line is that in the proposal you have before you, we had asked for $30,000 because our plan at the time that I presented it to Laurie was to completely remodel, if you will, the ice skating park at the park at Crow Hill. That was going to involve engineering, it was going to involve planning board, it was going to involve an awful lot of material, it was going to involve a lot of work. And since that point in time, we've had conversation with the city of Ellsworth, for example, who has a kit that they've purchased and have had very good luck with, and so we feel that that might be a better route for us to go. So now, instead of looking at $30,000 for for the total renovation at the park at Crow Hill, we're looking at the potential to put a surface rink, if you will, closer to our building on the property right there by the school. And if you drive by there right now, all it has to do is freeze up, and we've got the largest skating rink anywhere around. So, so anyway, now instead of 30,000, we're figuring somewhere in the range of 12,500 to buy the kit, install the kit, do everything we need to the ground to prepare it, and all of that. So that seems good. The second thing was $10,000 that we had originally asked for to have the field at I shouldn't say at Consolidated, the field in front of our building, Parsons Field, to have that top dressed. We were waiting to have the entire building taken care of and all of that before we top dressed the field. So the time is now, and we had originally estimated about $10,000, but when I actually got a price from a company that does that kind of work, it was just under $3,000. So Laurie switched it over into the regular operating budget. So that's the best I can do to be a hero for this evening.
Sounds good. Thank you, Carol.
Anything else?
Carol, just a question. What, do you have plans for the use of the current skating rink if it were moved to Parsons Field for the Crow Hill rink?
I don't really have plans at the present time for that. We have certainly had some ideas floating around in terms of what could be done with that space, but nothing has been planned. We need to take one step at a time.
Absolutely. Just a question.
Yeah. So
Did you just want to talk about the tennis courts?
for next year?
Yeah.
Yes, the tennis courts at our park at Beechwood, the normal lifespan for tennis courts is about 20 years. We've already exceeded that. We've been able to maintain pretty solid surface over all these years by simply every 6 years resealing it, filling the cracks and that sort of thing. We're now at a point where filling the cracks doesn't seem to last. The cracks just reappear. And so we've been advised that probably the best thing to do is to do like a 2-inch overlay and seal that. So next year's capital will be a bigger one, the request. So.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay, thank you.
So Michael Claus wants to come to the podium and talk to us about, first of all, Cape Porpoise Pier. So that is out in 2022 because we are trying to work in conjunction with the state. But do you want to speak briefly about that?
We're looking at renovating the entire pier. The issue we have, of course, is the rubble under the bait shed is sort of moving slowly out into the harbor. The steel pilings that are in there that were holding back some of that rubble have rusted away. So we've had an engineer look at it, and it's going to be tough to. We need to essentially replace the bait shed. So we've gone through all that with you guys. We're looking at funding cycles for that with the state and looking for as much state aid as we can get. We're looking also at working, if the state comes out with any money for Pier Road, we're looking at, working with them on raising Pier Road if mitigation funds become available for that. But the pier itself, we're pretty much ready to do the engineering on that and get it. We'd like to get it shovel ready, so to speak, in case funding money for climate change mitigation does arise.
So do you want to review Public Works and special projects?
So I will start with our highway vehicle and equipment replacement schedule. This year we're just looking to replace our Z-Track mower, which is the mower we use to mow town properties. And that's 2005, so we'll keep that one as a reserve. We use that to both. We use our reserve mowers to do things like the disc golf and anything that might. We don't mind damaging the mower if it hits a rock, so that's where we keep our reserve mowers for. We have a 2006 Ford Ranger, which we've sort of nursed along, and we'd like to get that out of the fleet. We inherited the sewer department's truck, pickup truck, when they replaced their truck with a new 3/4 ton. So we've got their old half-ton, which is just a 2-wheel drive, and that'll be our mechanic's truck. And what we'll do is get ahead, and the truck that I plow with we'll keep as our parks truck, and I'll be plowing with the new truck, is what we hope to do. So that's what we've got, $35,000. We'd get either a 3/4 ton or a 1 ton with a plow truck, similar to what we just got for wastewater. So that's our vehicle plan. Go on to roads.
Sure.
For roads, I've done pretty much I've continued about the same funding level we've been doing the past few years. I've picked out a number of smaller roads to do our maintenance paving on, our overlays, and I put those in our plan. For my major work, we're looking at trying to finish out Mills Road. Working with the state, they're looking at getting one more round of MPI funding. They're looking at doing some cost share on overlay work with them. We would do the shim, and they would do the overlay. So there's a good cost savings there to get a good product out on Mills Road. So our hope is FY20 to finish Mills Road. It may leak over into FY21, but if all goes well, we can have Mills Road done for you.
You guys have done a terrific job so far.
Yeah, really.
It's much improved.
So we'll see if we can get it done.
I'm sure you can. Mike, when you said, we were talking about Pier Road, just to jump back a little bit, and Cape Porpoise Pier, and I see in here in FY22, we've got about $61,000 in there to do Pier Road. Is it possible that we could get some money from the state so we could make the causeway higher?
We are keeping an eye on the state. Many states are doing mitigation funding for climate change, for infrastructure projects. Woodard and Curran has done a study of Pier Road as to what needs to be done to raise that. They have updated their cost estimate that they had done back in, the last time they'd done the cost estimate for me was 2013. They've updated that up to 2019 estimate. And I'm talking to them about what it would take to get that shovel ready in case some funds appear.
I could imagine that it would cost a lot more than that just to do the causeway itself.
Yeah, well, I think the 2013 estimate was like 670,000. So, it's obviously we aren't going to do it until we see some significant mitigation funding become available. But I think we want to be ready, especially if we're improving the pier, if we're putting $2 million into the pier. It doesn't make sense to not be able to get to it at high tide.
Correct.
So
I have a boat. I don't know about the rest of you.
So, yes.
Thank you, Mike.
Other special projects you've got for me?
On the document that we all shared, there certainly is.
Okay, I didn't bring
So
that one.
the Ocean Avenue, the seawall,
Yes, so that's underway.
the other seawall that we had talked about.
Okay, so once again, back in 2009, Water and Current had identified the seawalls along Ocean Avenue as being things we should keep an eye on and put in our mitigation projects. So, we've got those items. We're updating the cost estimates on those and getting there. Once again, those are large bonded, either bonded or, we're looking for mitigation money essentially on that. Or we could bond them ourselves, but that's something we want to get shovel ready for. It's basically engineering planning now in order to get funding if it becomes available. So.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay.
So we have Chris Simeone to talk about wastewater.
Good evening. So for the coming year,
Chris has some slides that you can either see behind you or on the TV to the side here.
they're not all that exciting.
Trying to show the rest of them up, Chris.
No, and I know I'm gonna probably catch some slack for that after I leave here, so. We're looking at 4 items in particular this year. First one being the replacement of the 2004 John Deere loader. We're also looking for replacement of the waste oil furnace in the administrative building / garage. We're looking at the continuation of the grinder pump replacement program that we started. And we're also looking at replacement of certain lab equipment. The 2004 John Deere loader has been in service now for 14 years, going into its 15th year. It's about 8,000 hours of use on it right now. This loader is used almost daily during plant operations, mostly for the solids handling and the composting process. The machine is serviced frequently by our personnel, but recently some more repairs have required outsourcing that to Nortrax on field service calls. The operators have noticed that the machine is gradually getting tired, lacking power, and requiring more repair. Machine reliability is obviously critical to our plant operations down there so that we can manage the sludge. The loader lives in a harsh environment up there. We're constantly moving wood ash around because that's what we use for the odor control for the composting process. That is very acidic, and as a result, the machine does ingest that. We're having rust issues and other things cropping up as a result. The purchase price of the loader is $134,200. There is a lease to purchase option available at $22,000 a year for 7 years. The loader can be purchased at the end of the lease for a total amount of $1. Second item, the waste oil furnace at the administrative building. It recently came to our attention through personnel that we had a call out back in June. This furnace has been in service since 1993. The furnace does provide heat and hot water to the administrative building and also the garage. We've had an increase in service-related calls for a number of different reasons, one of which was to replace the actual burner on it. During the last service call, Derigo Heating noticed that there were some cracks in the firebox and also that there was access. I don't know a lot about furnaces, but between the combustion chamber and the heat exchanger tubes. They patched these temporarily with some cement, furnace cement, to keep it running. And I did speak to them about repair, and they did advise that repair was cost prohibitive, and it would only be a temporary solution from this point forward. We did call to see about having the furnace replaced, and we were giving a replacement quote of $37,418. Which was a little bit higher than what we thought it was going to be. Another variable that we just recently ran into is we had been, in addition to taking waste oil from local people, local fishermen, to kind of offset some of the heating costs, we were purchasing our waste oil from a company out of Massachusetts. That company was just recently bought out by Clean Harbor, and Clean Harbor will no longer deliver bulk oil unless we take at least a 1,000-gallon delivery. The tank that we have in the garage is only a 350-gallon tank, so we do not have the storage capacity to take a 1,000-gallon delivery. This variable just came to our attention about 3 weeks ago. So right now we are currently exploring other heating options to include propane and heat pumps, and after we have some more information, we'll have to make some cost considerations as to what the best way might be to go. And then onto the grinder pumps. The town of Kennebunkport owns 93 grinder pumps here at various residences in town. We started the replacement program in 2014 in an effort to reduce the maintenance costs and service calls due to the problematic history of the former E1 injector pumps. The price for 13 of these pumps was $24,895 last year. requesting an additional amount of $2,105 for a total of $27,000. The additional balance this year is to account for inflation, rental of a mini excavator that we typically have to rent to take care of the excavation for the wire, and then also for the wire itself for the installation. These newer barn styles pumps have proved less problematic, and they've reduced maintenance and service call-outs, resulting in less overtime usage. And then the final item, replacement of certain lab equipment. We are looking to purchase a new digital scale and pH meter to replace the antiquated dial indicator scale and the current pH scale that we have. The current scale is approximately 40 years old, and the results can be subjective based on the user. Our pH scale indicator lacks a slope value, which DEP has kindly requested the last couple of years that we upgrade. The new digital scale and pH meter will provide more accurate results and reporting to help us remain compliant with our discharge requirements. So, anybody have any questions?
So Chris, can you just touch on the fact, we do have some pump stations in here, and where we are in terms of the current engineering study and our analysis of other capital?
Sure. So as you know, we currently have several bond projects that are in the works and due to start here shortly. We're still in the preliminary design phase issue, working out some issues that we have. Part of this, to secure the financing through the state revolving fund, we had to have a financial sustainability plan conducted. And this plan is basically, it's an assessment of all the town's sewer infrastructure, the assets that we have. And basically, it's going to be a grading system that's applied to each one of these assets based on its condition and its criticality. After this fiscal sustainability plan is done, it's basically going to drive a 20-year capital plan and a schedule for replacement of these capital items. We are due to receive this about June. We spoke with the engineers today, and it should be ready somewhere at the end of May, beginning of June. After we have that, we will have a much clearer idea of what we need to start looking at and what we should be putting on a replacement schedule.
Great, thank you, Chris. So again, this is the capital improvement plan to give you an idea of what things are upcoming. As through the budget process, we will be deciding what items we bring before you as part of the actual funding, and we'll continue to gather information on them. But certainly, if you have any thoughts or want to discuss them further, we would appreciate any feedback from the board.
I think it's very good and, very forward-thinking of us to go ahead and do this. And I know a lot of this was your doing, and I hope you take some credit for this.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, I see that our representatives from HM Payson are here to present our annual investment report. Oh, you okay? I think we need a new table in that CIP. Yeah.
Put it on the budget.
I second the
Yep.
motion.
Absolutely.
The first time, that's
So the one in your book, this is an updated one.
Perfect. We like updated.
thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry for the delay. Had some flooding in Portland, slowed us down.
Okay.
Thought it might have been the wind.
Yeah.
We didn't have a delay, we just started without you.
Yeah. Yeah, my driver slowed me down. So we have report for you on the town funds, and everything is as of the end of the calendar year 2018. So if you see on page 1, overall, just looking at where we are at from an asset allocation perspective, we are about 71% stocks, 20% bonds, 9% cash. If you recall, the policy is for 75% stocks, 25% bonds, so we're slightly underweight, but we feel comfortable with where we're at. The cash position is a little bit higher than you typically see, but in this market environment, we don't think that cash is the opportunity cost that it once was. What we mean by that is that we're earning over 2% on that cash now, which is not much different than what you would earn in the short-term bonds that we'd be investing in. So we're happy to have some extra cash there and gives us some flexibility in the portfolio. On page 2, you can see the returns. Portfolios did very well. As you may or may not know, the last 3 months of 2018 was pretty volatile for the stock market. The portfolios held up pretty well. So if we start here with the fiscal year-to-date numbers, more short-term, that would be 6 months of returns. You can see the cash returned just over 1%, fixed income just under 1%, and the equities were down 3.5%. But if you compare that to the benchmark below it, we were up about 400 basis points from the market, so we were 4% higher than where the market was. That gives you a total return for those 6 months of 2.4% compared to the benchmark of 5.2%. Continuing looking at the previous 12 months, so that'd be for calendar year 2018. If you look at the total in the red down at the bottom, the portfolio was up just over 1% compared to the benchmark being down over 4%. So you can see the equity return there of just over 1% really held up the portfolio, so we were able to outperform in a down market, which is what we would hope that these portfolios would do, since we're looking very closely at the characteristics of how we're putting together that stock portfolio. 3-year numbers, the total portfolio is up over 9.4% compared to the benchmark at 6.7. Again, the difference in the equities there, the 12.8 compared to the 8%, is driving that difference. And then inception to date, we're just shy of 3 years, but the portfolio is up 5.3% compared to 4.6 for the benchmark. So obviously the equity returns are driving the total return, which is what we would expect, and that's why we have the portfolio positioned. And really, that higher equity allocation is there for the portfolio to grow over the long term. So to the extent that these are perpetual funds, that's the right allocation and what we want it to be doing. What that means in real dollars on the next page is you can see for fiscal year to date, we started the fiscal year at just over 1.3 million. About $19,800 went out. We lost about $35,000, so that ended the year at just over at 1.27 million. But if you look at it over a longer time period, from 2016, started over 1 million, about 71,000 has gone out, and we've earned about 254,000 over that period of time. So just putting real dollars to it to compare against those percentages. The next couple pages are really just taking a look at the characteristics of the equities within the portfolio, which is the stock holdings in there, and this is where we're doing more of the active management. Again, this is where we're looking for the growth in the portfolio over the long term. So a couple key characteristics here that we have in that box are how we're comparing how we look to the market. The biggest delta that you'll see is on the return on invested capital. So this is where we're looking for companies to be reinvesting their earnings and growing their company. So happy to see a little bit more of a delta there. And the V ratio is our value ratio. You can see the calculation over on the right, but really we want this to be inching closer towards 1, and that would be the optimal portfolio. Then just to give you an overview of how the portfolio looks compared to the S&P 500, which would be a proxy for the U.S. stock holdings in the portfolio. Biggest key takeaway here is we don't look like the index. You know, we're really trying to build the portfolio with better characteristics so that it can do well in these down markets, which is exactly what it did. So, you know, there's certain areas in here where companies are too capital intensive to be earning money beyond that in the utility space and materials, so we're going to purposely avoid some of those areas more so than others. And then you can see here the top 10 holdings in the portfolio. And these are a percentage of the equity, so most of these names you can recognize. We have made some changes in January in terms of pulling back on Merck. I don't know, Dan, if there are any others you want to talk to, but all in all, we're comfortable with the top 10 holdings, and most of these are core holdings for us, so you're not going to see too many changes, just maybe some adjustments around the edge. But that's the portfolio update. If you have any questions on that, or if there's anything more macro oriented you'd like us to touch on, we can certainly do that. I think we're pretty happy with how the portfolio is positioned.
So just to remind the board, we do have an investment subcommittee, which is Pat and Alan and Bob McCrillis, and they do meet a couple of times a year with the investment group to review things, ask questions, talk about changes in the market and how we're doing. I don't know if Pat has any comments he wants to add as a representative of the subcommittee.
No, I have nothing to add.
Are you comfortable with having Apple as your information technology, given some of their recent, well, I guess, that they've come out and said they're running out of iPhones to sell? And it seems to be a pretty big part of their business.
Yeah, Apple will be a core holding for us, for no other reason than they have an extremely strong balance sheet, a lot of cash,
That's an understatement,
yeah,
yes.
and I mean, a great management group,
Yeah.
so it's not a concern for us. I mean, you might see some volatility from that in the short term, but in some ways that gives us opportunities to be adding to it where appropriate, so.
Okay.
Want to add anything?
Sure. I like the core holding. I'm sure that was an unintended pun for Apple, but
Yes.
yeah, I mean, Apple's a terrific example of really a battleship balance sheet for us. They've got they're great capital allocators. They've got a solid and growing dividend. Now, when you talk about the iPhone number of iPhone sales, which they've actually, the revenue number has come down in certain sectors of the globe, but they've also stopped tracking the number of iPhones being sold purposefully because the mix has changed. So their profit margins have remained very steady. Apple lost, I think, about 39% over the course of the year from top to bottom. So they had a really difficult year, but we did add to it actually in January. And we bought CSX, so about a railroad company. We actually eliminated the Merck position entirely. We also started to dip our toe in the water in the banks, which we don't typically own, but they were so absolutely cheap that it made sense for us to get in where we can find those pockets of opportunity. We're going to try and take advantage of those. Just quickly to get back to the performance numbers on page 2, and you don't have to go back to it, but that 790 basis points of outperformance vis-a-vis the market. I mean, one of the things that we try to do, as Molly pointed out, is build the portfolios from the bottom up with companies that have superior valuation characteristics. And so the ability to be able to generate a positive return both in the portfolio and for the equities when the markets were so volatile and down really pretty severely in Q4, we were very pleased with that. In terms of some of the other things that we've done recently, I mean, we're kind of doing, and we're making changes around the edges, as Molly said. I mean, no real wholesale changes, except, as I said, we did come out of Merck. We're reducing some of our healthcare holdings in the portfolios. That's a function of the fact that I've been around long enough to know that I don't want to go through an election cycle holding too many large cap pharma companies. They're just going to be the whipping boys for for the next 2 years. So that was part of the reason that we eliminated Merck, and it was fully valued, and it gave us a 30% return in 2018. So, we had a lot of companies that did very, very well, but everything fell out of bed, obviously, in December. I think the month of December was down 13%. Worst December since 1931 in the equity markets. So, and we all know what the economy was like in 1931. So we're obviously stronger than that, but.
No, I'm not second guessing you. I'm just curious.
What's that?
I said, please, I don't mean that I was trying to second guess you. I was just curious as to your take on it, because, unfortunately these days I've been so busy. Most of what I get to hear is, from the from the news.
Right.
And that's not the best place to get your news,
Yeah, I mean,
especially
Apple,
financial.
Apple's just such a terrific consumer products company. I mean, it's obviously a tech company too, and it's characterized as such, but, you know, we view it as more of a consumer products company. You know, the GDP growth in domestically is still very, very strong, or at least it will be once the government shutdown ends.
Yeah.
But in terms of, you know, the trend line, you know, both the earnings and kind of the balance sheets of US companies, we're in so much better shape than the rest of the globe. We're starting to dip our toe into the emerging markets, and we've added a little bit to the emerging markets in the second half of the year. We're avoiding Europe by design. But the economy right now, people like to talk about recession because everybody's kind of glass half full these days, I mean half empty, but we don't see any recession on the immediate horizon. I mean, the growth is great, the fiscal policy is working, unemployment's terrific. We think the Fed's on hold for a while. So that doesn't mean we're not in for volatility. We think we're probably going to see continued volatility in 2019, so we can, and to Molly's point, having the cash, the extra cash doesn't bother us. Again, we're actually earning about 2.3% on the cash right now, so it's a good proxy for debt, and it's frictional, so, which means we can add to equity positions in the portfolio whenever we get the chance.
I think you guys have done an excellent job, and we are risk adverse here, of course. I mean,
Risk averse.
We are we're a municipality where,
Right.
you know, we want to make some money, but this is better than putting it in the bank. And, you know, if you doubled our portfolio in, you know, 5 to 10 years, that would be terrific. But, you know, that is, you know, our goal here is to grow the money that we have. But, you know, the town's goal in its portfolio is different than mine in my personal portfolio.
Right.
And, you know, so I really like your philosophy.
No, understood, great, thank you very much. Any other questions? I have none. We can talk about this all night.
Yeah.
I can. Since we were here late.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Molly.
Yeah. All right, so item number 8, other business. Sheila? Pat?
Nothing.
Lori?
I just want to let people know that the Parks and Recreation Department has a lot of new programs out, and you should check out the website, including their senior luncheon that they're going to start the week of February, of Valentine's Day. It'll be the Wednesday prior on February 13th. So make sure you talk to Carol Cook and look at the website.
Excellent. Anything else, Lori? I don't have anything. I just want to congratulate the Patriots on another AFC championship.
Yes.
I'm sure that I'm not alone in that, and looking forward to watching them a week from Sunday, hopefully for a 6th ring.
I am a minority owner in another NFL team.
Well, that's your problem. Okay, number 9.
Move the warrant?
Move the warrant.
So move.
I second.
All in favor?
Oh, you moved the word. Sorry.
Do I have an adjournment?
Adjournment, yes.
Second.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you for coming out this evening.
I was just doing Stu's job.
I know.